Going live, waiting to see if anyone hops in to say hello as your substitute teacher. Adam's here, so I know I'm on. That's good to know. All right, if you haven't joined yet, then you're going to have to pick it up when you watch it on the replay rather than live. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Whenever I'm here, I bring back the Handsome Hour. Handsome Hour? No, the Basketball Beat theme music. I do that for all of you, just to give you a little. Those of you who haven't been listening that long, you haven't heard this before probably, and those of you who are OGs, you know this. So Purdue tonight wins 90-72 over USC in Mackey. I am Jay from Boyle Sports. Boyle Dad is under the weather tonight. At least that's the story he gave. You never know with him. You know, too much of the brown liquor. I don't know. Tends to be Friday night is when you get that flu. You know, but he's not available tonight. So unfortunately, you're stuck with me. Purdue wins 90-72. Purdue is number 7 in the country. They are now 19-5. They are 11-2 in conference. They continue to win. We are in February. We are in Painter's Month. For those of you who are unaware, this is Painter owns February. He always has. It used to be something we said as a bit of a joke because he didn't own March. And we used to say that February was his best time. And it still is. It is when he's most dominant. But man, he's freaking good. He's good. He's just getting better. He's getting better all the time. And I think one of the things I wanted to say was about kind of what this season has felt like and how this team is still there at 11-2, despite having lost what they lost off of last year's team. But before I do that, let me thank our sponsors, our friends at AJ's. You can go in there and get yourself some delicious food. AJ's on Vine in West Lafayette. And if you need some apparel, Home Field Apparel, go to Home Field Apparel, enter Boiled 25 at checkout and get 15% off your first order. I was thinking about this game, and I've been thinking about this whole thing all season. And in fact, I saw Michael. You guys know Michael. You've occasionally seen him on these shows. I saw him this week because I was traveling for work, and we were talking, and he, I think, articulated it well. He said, last season I was really just thinking, yeah, this is great, and I'm enjoying watching it, but we got to get to March. I want to see what happens. And I think that all of us felt that way, right? I think that resonates with everybody. I think we all felt like, yeah, this is good, but we know what this team's going to be judged by what they do in March, right? And then he said, but this year it just feels like that house money thing where you're like, I'm just enjoying this because they weren't supposed to be this good, right? And you didn't go into this season. It's a fun one because you didn't go into the season with the same kinds of expectations. You're not coming off an embarrassing first round loss. You don't have the best player in the nation. Well, arguably you might have a couple of the best players in the nation, but you know what I mean. You don't have Zach Edey. You don't have the consensus National Player of the Year 2 years in a row. So there's a little bit less pressure in that sense, right? And you had people talking about how Purdue's going to take a step back because how could they not, right? Instead, Purdue is a top 10 team. They are solidly top 10 now. Like I said, 19-5, 11-2 overall. They are technically, I'm looking at the standings, they're technically a game up because of the standings being a little wonky, right? They've played 13 games. Michigan State's only played 11, and Michigan's only played 11. They're both 9-2, Purdue's 11-2, right? So they're even in the loss column, which is you want to be that or better, right? But you get 2 more wins. So once they catch up to Purdue in terms of getting to 13 games, they have to win both of those extras in order to get there. So that's a nice position to be in. Purdue is solidly in first place, even though it's only technically a game and technically 0 in the loss column. It feels more solid, right? Because you've also still got you got Michigan State coming up very soon. Let me take a look. You got Michigan next, so you can definitely put some distance between them. Yeah, then Wisconsin, then Michigan State. So you do have the opportunity to, I don't know if I'm going to say put this away, but In the next 3 games, let's say you win the next 3 at Michigan versus Wisconsin, at Michigan State, tall order, I realize, 2 on the road. But if you do that, I mean, you're in a position then you'd be 14-2, and they would both have at least 3 losses. I don't know. It's crazy that we're talking about that. It's crazy that we're talking about, by the second week of February, Purdue is on the verge of putting away the Big Ten. Like they still might not win it. I mean, we all realize that because they're technically, I could keep saying, even in the loss column. So there's no lock here that they're going to win it. But damn, man, we're talking about the team that I don't think anybody could argue is not clearly the best team in the Big Ten or playing the best, right? I mean, I guess you could argue Michigan State, could be in the discussion, but they're finally starting to hit a part of their schedule that's a little tougher. So that stuff will sort itself out, right? I mean, we're going to know in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks anyway. But Purdue's shaping up to be like a 2 seed. And you could argue that the 1 seed line is actually in play, which is nuts. It's freaking nuts, right? They're 7th and they're continuing to win. What are they going to be Monday? 5th, 6th? I mean, it obviously depends on what happens ahead of them. But, we've said this before. Enjoy this stuff, guys. Enjoy this. This is so fun. This is the old adage. I think Boiler Dad said this a year or 2 ago. He said, these are the good old days. You have to look at it like that. Purdue has not been this dominant, and this is a good basketball program, but to be this consistently good where you're just, they had a couple hiccups earlier in the season, but that's it, right? A couple games they lost to teams that were definitely good, very good Marquette team, Auburn, a very good A&M team. They've lost to some, good teams, right? And I know some of the games they didn't look great, but those are early season, month or 2 into the season, when you are adjusting to life without Zach. And here they are, 19 wins. The other thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to, in fact, I want to look at the box score here. I want to talk about the players because I know, profound on a post-game wrap, right? Braden Smith gets a lot of airtime, and he should. I mean, he's fantastic. He had a weird game tonight, right? He was 4-11 from the field, 0-4 from deep. He had he did a couple cool baskets. He had that really weird, sort of reverse spinning the ball off the backboard thing. I think that was late in the first half. He had 9 points, though, is all he had. So he's had some monster games of late. He only had 9 points, but he still had 13 assists. He had 5 more steals. He also grabbed 3 rebounds. So just, again, he does that thing, right, where when he's not totally productive scoring, he's still doing so much. And he gets a lot of airtime, and he deserves that. But Trey Kaufman-Renn, guys, is it me or is he having a quietly great season, right? I don't think people, if you watch broadcasts, people will talk about, oh, this guy has worked so hard. He's so good. He is averaging 18.7 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and he's shooting 60% from the field. They threw a stat up in the first half, and I'm far too lazy to have actually captured this, but they were throwing those kinds of what his numbers were. I believe it was points. I believe it was points, rebounds, and assists, and shooting percentage. And his numbers were 1 of 1 in terms of all of those being as good as they are, if that makes sense. I'm doing a really poor job of explaining, but I think you know what I mean. The point is, when you factor in all those key stats, he's one of the better players in the nation statistically. And maybe that's not surprising to you, but this is not a guy, I don't think, who's going to get a lot of talk for being even Big Ten Player of the Year, right? But maybe he should be. Braden Smith's going to get all that attention. But Trey Kaufman-Renn has been phenomenal. He's been nothing short of phenomenal, I think, this year. And hey, working in practice against Zach Edey, that'll do something for you, right? He's just been great. It's been great to see. It's been fun to watch him. I don't want to say fun to watch him wait his turn because he contributed. He had good games when Zach was here. He just didn't get as much run, right? But he got better. And I mean, this shows you can still run a basketball program like Matt Painter does. It's possible in the NIL era. It's possible to do it. Will it be possible in another 5 years? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe things will change. Maybe contracts will come in. Maybe some sort of organization to all this will happen, and it'll actually be easier because you almost be required to build something. But it just makes me laugh when We got people out there talking about how Brad Underwood, whatever the hell his name is a great recruit. Oh man, he recruits the portal so well. And there's people out there talking about how that makes him a great Big Ten coach, and they're not. They're just not. Illinois is 7-6 in the conference now. Like these schools that everybody thought was really good. Oregon's 5-7 in conference. Oof, that looked like a good win when Purdue got it, and sadly, it's not. IU 5-7 in conference. USC, I do think is going to be good because Musselman's a good coach, and everywhere he goes, his teams get better fast and are very feisty. And the dude just knows how to coach. And I think they're 13-10, 5-7. Their first year in the Big Ten. They're not going anywhere this year, but they're not circling the drain. They're not doing what Penn State and Washington and Minnesota are doing. So, they're going to be good. They're going to be good. I'm glad to get them when we got them. Let's put it that way. I'm glad to get the win. And Purdue, as I said on Twitter, kind of pulled their boa constrictor move where, they played well. They played solid. But you just kind of, every time you looked up at the screen, they were up another 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's 8. It's 12. Oh, it's 17 now. Oh, look, it's 22 now. Like, they just kind of tighten around your throat and just keep tightening. The USC Trojans have a tough time rebounding. I'm looking here at the stats. They had 31 rebounds, Purdue had 48. It was obvious too. Like they just do not rebound well. And Trey Copenren is becoming an artist when it comes to rebounding. Like he's getting to be like those one-armed rebounds that he then puts right back up. Like if you have a kid who plays basketball, have him watch. You can have him watch Braden Smith if you want, but then they're going to want to try to do everything Braden Smith does. When it comes to like fundamentals, like grabbing rebounds and putting the ball right back up, something that I hound my own kid about, watch how TKR does it. He was 8 of 12 from the field, 8 of 9 from the line. He had 10 rebounds, as I mentioned, 24 points. He had 2 blocks. And he's not had a lot of blocks this year. Threw in an assist and a steal, pretty good. Those were and then Fletcher Loyer had his customary 14 points, 2 of 7 from deep. Let me see here real quick off the bench. Raleigh Burgess had an interesting game. He only played 8 minutes. He had 8 points. He had a flagrant. He grabbed a couple of rebounds. He was 2 of 3 on free throws. So very, very full game for an 8-minute appearance. Jakari Harris had 7 points in 15 minutes. And Miles Colvin had 8 points in 17 minutes. He was 2 of 8 from deep. He took 8 threes in 17 minutes, which is an interesting thing. It's almost like he's trying to shoot his way out of the slump he's been in. And he hit a couple tonight that, he only shot 25% from deep. But, I mean, you guys, you've been watching basketball a long time too, right? It matters. Getting a couple of those to go in matters, right? Like that's important. So let's hope that starts to send them on the right path. Purdue, as I mentioned, has, let's see here. They have Michigan coming up next on the 11th. Let me look at my calendar. That is Tuesday night. And then on Saturday of next week, they play Wisconsin at home. And then they follow that up 3 days later at Michigan State. That's followed by a game at Indiana. That ought to be fun. By then, they probably will have announced that Brad Stevens is their new coach, or or I don't know, or Billy Donovan or Red Auerbach. I said on Twitter, if the thing is, people still talk about like, oh, there's our connection to tonight. Who cares if there's you guys should care about winning. Nobody should care about whether there's a connection to Bob Knight. But if that's important, Pat Knight's out there. He's waiting for your call. He's been a head coach. Totally earned it too. Totally on merit. Totally. So you guys should make him the coach. If that's so important, make Pat Knight the head coach. That seems perfect. It seems like a perfect fit. So, as I said, Purdue's moved to 19-5. They look really good. I don't know what more there is to say. Let's see what you guys have to say tonight. Let me check the chat here, as Boiler Dad likes to do. Adam P. is here. John says, extra handsome tonight. I appreciate that, John. I think you're just buttering me up for some reason. Greg Romanis says, hello, cheers. Jim Garfinkel says, wow, J Money Live. Yes, that would be the name of my late night show if I had one. It'd be J Money Live. I think, or maybe just everything you wrote there. Just wow, J Money Live. I think that's a good title. I think that would be good. Good variety show title. Robert Gill says, hello. Quinn says, let it be known Braden Smith is a god. Yeah, I mean, he looks like kind of an Amish god, but maybe that should be the Amish God, the Amish point God. I think we've done it, guys. I think we've nailed it. Kevin in Albuquerque says, "Good evening, J Money. Good evening, Kevin. Good to see you. Glad you're here." Adam P says, "It sounds good here." Well, of course it does. Of course it does. The velvet pipes are here for you. Of course it sounds good. Jim Garfinkel says, "Music?" ? Does that mean you couldn't hear it, Jim, or does that mean that you're just unfamiliar with music? See, it's kind of like Footloose, where no one's allowed to dance, so you've never heard music before. So that's a good reference. That's like a Boiler Dad reference. I'm throwing in something from like 40 years ago to see who's been paying attention and who's old, right? Anyone under the age of like 40 or 35 is not going to know what I'm talking about. Production quality on point. Greg Manis says, "Well, clearly, I'm the technophile, audiophile. I don't know, guys. It's Friday night. It's 10:14 Eastern. I don't know. I'm tired. I was traveling this week. Like I said, I was in Texas, the great state of Texas, where it was 80 degrees, and I wanted to move back. And I saw Michael, and he still exists. He's still alive. It's great. We'll get him on a show again one day." Yo says the TKR is twice the player now that he is hitting his free throws. Yeah, I mean, now he's at a point where, and like I said, tonight he had a couple blocks. He rebounds like a mother. He scores like he scores. He's one of those guys where you're like, man, he is so consistent. Like every game, he's putting in points. He's a reliable. Because I remember thinking when Zach left, I think this every time a guy like Boogie leaves or Zach leaves, I'm like, oh man, like anyone would. You think, where are those points going to come from, right? And the answer is, well, Lawyer, Smith, TKR, but Lawyer and Smith are going to put up what they've been putting up, right? TKR is totally filled the void. And Purdue keeps putting up points. Like, that's the other thing. There have been some Purdue teams that did not score a ton, right? This is 90 points yet again, right? Like, I don't think we should overlook that. Purdue had 90 tonight, 90 last game, 81 the game before that, 91 the game before that. They only had 70 when they lost to Ohio State. They had 104 against Nebraska, 69 against Auburn, 83 against Maryland. Like, this team scoring is not a problem. Scoring is not a problem. They beat Alabama when Alabama was number 2. Purdue scored 87. So the offense has been, better than advertised, right? And yet, the other bone to pick here, and Boiler Dad mentioned this too, the fact that there are Coach of the Year, Big Ten Coach of the Year, or National Coach of the Year, conversations out there, and Matt Painter's not a part of them, not even like an honorable mention. Like, what are we going to hold against him that he puts good teams together? He loses the 2-time National Player of the Year, and I'm not saying you got to hand him the Coach of the Year. However, he might win the Big Ten again. He might be a 2 seed, despite losing that. And we're not even going to mention him. That's incredible. That's incredible. And it's also incredible because the thing about Purdue not getting respect, that old bit, that's not as much of a thing anymore. Purdue does get respect. They do like Painter. A lot of people, media, coaches, people love Painter. So that one is still so weird to me. I think that might have been an ESPN list, which shouldn't surprise you that they did a poor job on their research. But yes, yo, TKR, twice the player now that he hits the free throws. I agree. He's filled in that one thing that he didn't do well. Jim Garfinkel says USC is not a very exciting basketball team. I agree, but they're going to get there. They had that one dude, though. He was filling it up. The hell was his name? Was it let me find that. Yeah, Yates. Wesley Yates. He had 30 of their 72 points. Now, nobody else, what do they have? Oh, they had 2 guys in double figures off the bench. No other starter. He had 30. The other starters had 7, 4, 2, and 0. That's tough to overcome. But 30 points on 11 of 22 shooting. So the dude shot 50% from the field and scored 30 points. So, like, that's the thing. Musselman's going to bring in guys like that, and they're going to be good. I wouldn't worry about that. The Well Ministry asks an interesting question. Minstry, sorry. Off topic. Why did a kid from New Jersey decide to go to school with trains and corn? That's a great question. The answer is I was trying to look at schools where I had a lot of options because I didn't know what I wanted to study. And my dad was encouraging me to look at state schools because, now that I've grown up and I have a kid that's in high school, I think, that's pretty smart advice because you can always look at different stuff. You don't have to know exactly what you're going to do. And I was looking at schools up and down the East Coast. North Carolina State was one. North Carolina, South Carolina, where my father went. I got into Villanova and had actually committed like I'm a recruit, right? I decided to go there. So I was almost at Nova, right? Where I would have seen, 2 national titles by now. And in March, I went out to visit Purdue, March of my senior year of high school. And I was on campus the night that Purdue advanced to the Elite Eight in the 1994 tournament. I was on campus that night, staying in the Union Hotel. So I got to hear what campus was like, did my tour the next day. And I remember on the flight home, I was like, I think I want to go here. So that's kind of the end of it. That was it. Then I went. So that's my story. That's how I wound up at Purdue. Some of you have probably heard me tell that before, but that's how a kid from New Jersey ended up at Purdue. And I do run into Purdue people here, not obviously as frequently as you all in the Midwest do, but I do sometimes. How did Illinois lose to USC? Jeff Nestor asks. Illinois is very inconsistent, Jeff. Illinois is not as good as people think. Underwood's not as good as anyone. Anyone who thinks he's good is I'm sorry, they're a little mistaken. He's serviceable. He's a decent coach. He's mid-tier, in my opinion, in the Big Ten. And I'm so tired of hearing about how he's a good coach. He's never won anything. Last year, they had their best run ever under him. I mean, their best run in a very long time since the team that I think cheated to get to the title game in like 2005. And what did they do when they got to the Elite Eight? They gave up a 30-0 run with no adjustments to UConn. So that's how Illinois lost, because they're not that good. Sorry, I'll just put it right there. Adam says, we first half it looked like a well-coordinated team. Each player knew their role. Second half, not quite as smooth. Maybe they put things on cruise control. Yeah, I think that game felt like pretty, what was it, 48-36 or something like that at halftime? Yeah, I remember looking at that and thinking, man, they're 48 at halftime. Again, this team is like cruising towards 95 to 100 points. The game was never in doubt, right? It's the rarity in those of you who've been watching Purdue for decades. It's the rarity in that I used to joke on Twitter all the time. I'd be like, how much does Purdue have to be up by for you to feel like this is in the bag? And like at halftime. And people used to be like, I don't know, 50, 100, right? As a Purdue fan, you're like, I don't know, 30 is not enough. 25 is not enough for me to feel good. This team, you get up double figures. I'm not saying they can't blow that, but against a team like USC, I don't know. You know how it is. There's a feel during games. There's just a vibe. And this game never felt like it was going to slip from their grasp. Jim Garfinkel says, you mean Zach Edey, potential NBA Rookie of the Year? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Jim, but he's very good. And he looks more ripped. He looks like he looks leaner and more muscular. And the dude, and he's got that little mean streak when guys try to push him around. It's hilarious because then they bump into him and they bounce off of him. God, I love it. I love everything about him. Greg Marianis says, I get it feels icky to cheer for IU for the next two, but they play UM and MSU. Yeah, I mean, I get it. This is like when Notre Dame is playing Ohio State in the college football playoff. It's like, you don't have to root for, you put it in quotes, you don't have to root for somebody. You don't have to debase yourself like that. You can simply check the score, and if IU wins and Michigan or Michigan State loses, you can think to yourself, well, that was good for us. That worked out well for us. It doesn't mean you have to cheer for them. See how I did there? See what I did? Right? And if IU loses to one of them, like the way they lost to Nebraska, or Wisconsin, getting down 26-4. They were down 26-4. That's like an AAU, a bad AAU game or a rec league game. 26-4. Oof. So if that happens again, you can still laugh at it. Because Purdue has this in their own hands. That's the other thing. You're not in a position where you need to rely on IU. Purdue has this in their hands. They control their destiny, as people like to say. Greg says it feels like 95 and 96. We're reminiscent of it, right? After losing Big Dog and then still owning the Big Ten. I would say, though, it definitely feels different to me because the 95 and 96 teams were not that talented. They really just weren't. There's nobody on those teams that you looked at and were like, ooh, preseason Big Ten Player of the Year potential, right? Those teams were grinders. Man, those were Katie teams where it was just like, well, you guys know how to win. I guess they had Konzo, right? Still after Glenn Robinson left. So he might have been the flashiest player they had, Konzo Martin. But they have like the Todd Foster days, Porter Roberts days. Those teams were not like, they just grounded out. They rebounded. They took care of the ball. They just waited you out. This team is truly talented, right? Truly can score in a number of ways. They're still not shooting great. Still not shooting great from three. As Boyd said, can we now admit they're not a great three-point shooting team? The last game at Iowa, they shot well, but that's because I don't think Iowa plays any defense. Tonight, Purdue shot, are you guys ready for this? They were 6 of 26 from three, 23%. Now, fortunately, USC also took 26 three-pointers and hit on 4 of them. That's 15%. So I'll do the math for you guys. Combined, these two teams tonight were 10 of 52 from deep. Now, that's where you could say to yourself, maybe we do it a little, maybe a team that shoots like that, maybe you don't play modern quote unquote basketball where you rely so much on the three. Maybe there's an argument to be made. I know the mid-range jumper is gone, and I'm not one of these old people who's like, no, take that 15-footer. I get the logic where it's like, just back up a few feet and just take the three. I get it. But maybe you play a little bit more of an inside game. When you have guys like TKR, right? And USC had some size there. Like, maybe you just throw it in down low. Maybe you got guys dribble penetration, right? Like, yeah, you kick it to guys who are wide open. You got to take some to keep the defense honest. But I don't know. When you have teams that are shooting like this, maybe I'm not a coach. Maybe Purdue does change their approach because they still scored 90 points. So they're doing something right. Jeff Nestor says Michigan game Tuesday on the road would be tough. I agree. But remember, Purdue absolutely pummeled Michigan. Now, that means that you could look at it a number of ways. Like, Michigan will be ready for them because of that. Or Purdue will go in pretty confident. Like last year when Purdue went to Illinois, when Purdue had already sewn up a tie in the Big Ten, and Illinois needed to beat Purdue to also have a chance to tie for the Big Ten, and Purdue just went in there and handled them. Like, I could see that happening too, where you're like, oh, it's going to be a tough game because Michigan's going to be ready, and Purdue just shows, nope, you guys aren't there yet. I do think that's a possibility. I honestly feel like that's more likely than winning at Michigan State, if that makes sense. Not that Purdue can't win that. Purdue wins in the Breslin Center, but I just have a weird feeling about that. I just kind of feel like the odds, I feel like it's more likely to be Michigan on the road than Michigan State, but I'll be thrilled if either happens. When was the last regular season Big Ten three-peat? John Timmons asks. I will get the research department on that. I think the last one, I think it was that 94, 95, 96 Purdue. I don't think anybody's done that since, right? You guys can correct me, but I don't think anyone's done that since. That's very hard to do. It's very difficult. And Purdue did it 3 times. That was amazing. Colvin had some wide opportunities to go to the hoop, but he didn't. When are we going to see more of Colvin and Heidi driving the lane? They're so athletic. Yeah, I mean, you do see Heidi. You see both of them try to go in for, like, Colvin had another one of those attempted. God, it would have been so gorgeous. He kind of cherry-picked behind the defense, and Braden saw him and tried to alley-oop, and Colvin caught it and was doing the reverse alley-oop. It would have just brought the house down, and he missed it. So they go to the rim sometimes. 50 Alpaca Herd says 50 fouls called, awful watching experience due to the Zebras. Yeah, and they're not even wear. Do they wear stripes? No, they don't, right? I know NBA refs don't wear stripes. This is how much I try not to look at them. I can't remember what they're wearing. Yeah, they're terrible. You know what else was terrible? DJ Carstensen, who always seems to be. He must have a thing where he must live in Lafayette because he loves doing Purdue games. But it didn't really matter. But Purdue gets the ball and has a break, and DJ stops the game to call a technical on Musselman because he was bitching that Purdue didn't get a foul call when one of their guys was driving. He literally stopped a fast break to call up technical. Like, you could let that play out as the official. You could stand where you are, kind of be ready to call it, and let the drive happen. And as soon as it's not a break anymore, then just blow your whistle, right? But they literally did it in the middle of a rush. Like, that's the kind of stuff that drives people nuts about bad officials. Like, I'm all for you calling a foul, a tech on the other team, sure. But it ended up working out because Braden missed the first free throw. So in essence, Musselman, saved his team a point. Karen Grillock says, BTFU. Brock Stapler, always like a handsome substitute. Oh, I appreciate that, Brock. Karen says, Caleb getting it done. Caleb first, he's awesome, dude. He's such a great guy. He's such a Boilermaker, right? Like, that dude does whatever he's asked. Last year, you're not going to start at all. You're going to barely play. You're going to play a minute or two in the title game, but you're not going to play much. You're going to have games where you're D&P. And tonight he had 9 points. He had 10 rebounds. Oh, man, I wanted one more point. The dude is a double-double. 9 points, 10 rebounds. Only 1 of 3 from the line. So there it was, Caleb. You had it. You had it. You could have had it. But he was 4 of 4 from the field, which is cool. All in 26 minutes. Just an efficient, tidy night. Like just love it. Love everything about it. Dude does anything he's asked. Takes big hits. Sets picks. Dude does everything. You're right. Jim Garfinkel says to John, MSU 88-90. He must be talking about a three-peat. Jim, that was before Purdue's last one. Maybe the question was, when was it before that? Maybe I misunderstood. That could be what that was. If so, then 88-90 for MSU. Braden, that's an interesting question. Braden says, what IU hire scares you the most, and is it Micah Shrewsbury? That one doesn't scare me. I guess what would scare me about that is it'd be like the situation at Notre Dame right now, where all their coaches are likable, and I hate that. Right? If Micah Shrewsbury was at IU, I don't think I could go to hate him. Right? I'll still hate IU, but I would be so disappointed seeing him there. The hire, I'll tell you, the hire that scares me the most, and is to me the smartest hire they could make, given what they need. I don't think it's Micah, although he's good in the state of Indiana. I think it's Chris Beard. Chris Beard, yes, he He's lost to Painter a couple times of late. The last couple times they've played, but he had Painter's number for a while, which means he could do it again. He's a good coach. He's one of the best coaches in college basketball, without a doubt. And I've heard some rumblings where it's like, well, would they go after him with the off the court stuff? Yeah, the accusations were terrible, but then the thing was dropped, and it's like he's available. And if you're IU, let's stop pretending like you're some moral, paragon of virtue. Like you want to win. I get it. I totally get it. To me, that's the smartest thing they could do, is go get a guy who's demonstrated good, wins, knows how to handle pain in the ass alums. Like I don't think I think he would make them really good for a while. That's the one that worries me. I think Painter can handle them, but I think he makes them really good and a real threat to have deep runs and get good players all the time, which they already do, but actually turn those players into something. That's the one that concerns me. Micah will just concern me from the fact that, man, I like that guy. Alpaca Herd says Chris Beard. Jim Garfinkel corrects himself. 98-2000 MSU. Okay, there you go. I did not realize that. So why they had a three-peat that fast after Purdue. I've just chosen to ignore that, obviously. He says it was shared with Illinois 98, but I think a couple of Purdue's were shared. I don't think Purdue's were outright. I don't think 95 or 96 were outright, but I could be wrong. Let's see. What other comments here? Dakic is out there. Greg Romina says, I hear he guarded Jordan in college once. Totally qualified. That's a great point. Dan Dakic would be terrific. Braden says, I love watching IU basketball fans and basketball football fans think they will land an elite coach because of their national relevance 4 decades ago. I mean, barely 4 decades ago at this point. And that's the thing. You're exactly right. I love it too. I love it so hard. The fact that they think, and the Field of 68 was talking and saying, oh, it's more fun when college basketball is more fun when IU's good. This is fun to me. That's such a stupid statement. That's like, to whom? To who is it more fun? That's like, it's more fun if UCLA is good. More fun if Kentucky's good. Is it? Like, I think it's just more fun when, like, the basketball is good and enjoyable. The tournaments are fun. And like, nobody gives a shit if IU is good anymore. Like, nobody cares. And IU has barely acted like they care because they've had some uninspired hires. Like, maybe not some. I mean, Archie was a smart hire. It just didn't work. I think Crean was a middling hire, but it worked better than they realized. They'd take what he did. I was talking to the World Sports guys. He won 29 games one year. They won the Big Ten, I think, twice. They went to the Sweet 16 twice. Like, they're still talking about that win over Kentucky. Like, they haven't gone near those heights since. Not near them. So what are we even talking about here? And yet every list starts with Brad Stevens. It's so pathetic. It's embarrassing at this point that they say that. Let's see what else we got here. Adam says different face tonight. Well, they're up. That's right. A great face. Thorogood says, is this Darth Vader, Dowd? Sure. That's fine. And Thorogood asks, is Anish earning his pay from the S Corp? Yeah, Anish, he made partner this year. So he's enjoying the yacht and the jet. and he's kind of, you got to get that out of your system when you first get that. And the last comment I think I'll leave you with here, Greg McManus says that 3-point shooting is a problem for the entire team, outside of Lawyer, not just Colvin Heide. Yeah, I agree. And I talked about that, and Bodas talked about that. And he said to us, he said it to all you guys too, but he said to us, guys, when are we going to just admit this is not, for whatever reason, this year's version of Purdue? I mean, last year's was a pretty good shooting team. This year's is just not shooting well. And that's included Lawyer some days, right? So, this team has a few more holes where you can see how they could be beaten, right? Like, say, in a tournament. Like, there could be matchup problems for them. Some teams are going to be bad matchups for Purdue. And if you have that and Purdue's shooting like crap, it's going to be tough, right? But what I will fall back on to stay positive is Purdue shoots poorly a lot of nights and still puts up 80, 90 points. So that's the beauty of having a guy like Trey Kaufman right down low and a guy like Braden Smith who's going to get points. He's going to find a way to get points, either for himself or for the team. So anyhow, that's the story for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for putting up with me as your substitute. Purdue wins 90-72, moves to 19-5, 11-2 in conference, alone in first place. And hey guys, just a few weeks left. Just a few weeks left. If I look at my calendar, 1, 2, 3, 4, what do we got? Like 4 weeks to Selection Sunday. It's crazy. It's crazy. Crazy town. So enjoy it. Enjoy it, because that also means that the cold of the winter is going to be gone soon. So thanks. So much good is coming. So much. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your weekends. Thanks for joining.